Okay, so today we are making pemmican. Now, we discovered pemmican a few years back and always wanted to give it a try, and so we decided to start making our own. I know that there are some companies out there who are making pemmican, but unfortunately, they're a little bit out of our price range. I think they're about $18 US per bar. These puppies actually end up being around $3 for us. By the end of the day when we're done with it. Either way, this is kind of how we make our pemmican. So we start with this here is an eye of round that we purchased from Costco. This one was I believe around $60 or so. The whole point here is for you to take off all the fat and leave just the meat behind. So this will enable you to dehydrate your cut of meat a little bit faster. So you don't want moisture. You need this to be dry. That's where the pemmican, I guess, kind of comes from. So you want it to be as lean and as dry as possible. Once you kind of start playing around with your cut of meat, again, trying to take off all the fat, you're going to start then to proceed to cut it into thin strips. The thinner, the faster it will obviously dry. So you kind of, again, we started with an eye of round. We have tried with a sirloin tip as well too. It's a little bit different cut of meat, but you can kind of use anything that you can get your hands on. The whole point here is you want minimal fat content, because when you are drying it, you want it to dry quickly, and the fat content will create more problems for you. I know some people can also use the oven. However, we prefer to use our dehydrator. We got ours at Cabela's. I think it was on sale when we purchased it, so it was a pretty good deal. So that being said, I'll see if I can link our dehydrator that we used somewhere in the link somewhere below. Anyways, once you're done cutting all of your strips, here are the end bits. We usually save these for the chickens or the cats or whatever animals want to eat it, but we do wrap it up, surround it up, just because we kind of made this later in the day. We were going to hydrate it till the next morning, so we just obviously surround it up and put it in the fridge until we were ready to go. And so next morning, like I said, I'll link that dehydrator below for you guys. You want to simply just take your cuts of meat, position them onto your trays for your dehydrator. Again, there's no seasoning on this. This is just straight beef that we're using. You can use any cut of meat you want, but we're hoping that majority of these trays will be filled. That will give us a good amount of the beef that we're going to add to our tallow and our salt later on. So again, you're just trying to place all of your cuts, skinny cuts, onto your trays, and then we're gonna throw this in the dehydrator once we're all said and done. So just finishing it up here. You can see we're kind of dwindling down. Every piece is going to look different, so don't worry about that. It's not going to be pretty, but here we are putting it into our dehydrator. We have about 12 trays, and I think this filled almost all of them, give or take. I think maybe it was about 10. So I know our dehydrator sits on the floor, but you can see there are all of our trays. What is that? 2, 4, 6, 8 trays maybe? Am I counting it right? Yeah, 8 trays. So we're going to start this puppy up where you put it in for 425, is it? For 10 hours. We started, and I think it did pretty good in 10 hours. Sometimes if your meats are a little fatter, you're going to have to put this in for a little bit longer, but play around with it. 145 degrees, not 400. 145 degrees Fahrenheit. Put it in for 10 hours. After 10 hours, we're able to open up that dehydrator, and you can kind of test to see how dry your cuts are. You want it to be as dry as possible so that it breaks easily, because you're going to be turning this into a powder essentially. So the drier, the better. And once everything is all ready for you, you take out all of your trays. We place all of our dried pieces into a bowl because, again, like I said, we're going to be blending these guys and turning it into as fine as a powder as we possibly can, because you want this to be so fine that it will combine a little bit easier with your tallow, making it easier to blend, and it forms that nice kind of like granola bar texture, right? And once it's done, we're going to get our tallow ready, finishing it up. Again, just placing it all in there. And this is our tallow that we've rendered before. Now, this is the tallow that we use for our resting beef face products. We've rendered it down. We're ready to go. And now we're going to start the process of, like I said, trying to mix all of these dried pieces of meat. Now, we started originally with the Vitamix, shoved as much in there as we possibly could. We had this guy left over from back in the day when we used to eat smoothies or drink smoothies. So we tried to crush it into a fine powder with the Vitamix, although it is a fantastic blender. This one didn't hold up as much as we wanted it to. So we kind of had to keep going back and forth and trying to see how it was blending. And of course you just keep adding and adding and adding, and you can already tell like it's not powder just yet. You want this to be as thin as possible and blend it down to a powder. So back in the day, they used to do this by hand with a mortar. Obviously that would take a long time, so we are not going to do that. I mean, if you want to try that, then go right ahead, you can attempt that, but this is just a little bit easier. But like again, I said, we tried to do it with the Vitamix, just kept trying to blend it all up, trying to get it as fine as possible. But unfortunately, the Vitamix disappointed in this aspect. So we had to improvise and acquire a different approach. So here you can see this isn't fine yet. This is still got chunks of beef in it. So we opted to get out our mini food processor and try to attempt to get it more into a powder. Sometimes you'll find that if your beef is also not dry enough, you're going to have a really hard time. So again, it's really, really critical that your cuts of meat are super dry for this process, because you're trying to blend it into a powder. And so we found that, again, the Vitamix wasn't really doing what we wanted it to. So we used this little hand mixer, which actually proved way better, and it worked a lot better for us, and it actually worked really quickly, surprisingly, with the amount of meat that we ended up having. And so now you can see this is the consistency that you want your beef to end up. It is powder form, it is dry. You can even feel how brittle it is, so it should have no big chunks of meat whatsoever. Again, powdered form is the ideal consistency that you want to start your meat out with. And again, use whatever tools you have, but food processors seem to work best for us. And once that's done, then we're going to measure out our lovely tallow. There it is again. So you want it to be a 1-to-1 ratio, meaning that if you have 1,000 grams of your beef, you want 1,000 grams of tallow. I think we were just under 1,000 on this point. I don't know if we're doing grams or not, but we were kind of weighing it. I think this one ended up being about 750, give or take 800 grams. So we just kept measuring out our tallow in portions until we had exactly the right amount. You can also just kind of pour it in, see the consistency, and then keep pouring and adding. So it doesn't have to be exactly a 1-to-1 ratio. That's kind of the standard across the board if you wanted to kind of get to a good base and a consistency. And once you have all of your tallow weighed out, then you simply just stir it, and add it to your dried jerky that you've already blended into a powder. So we're going to get all that ready to go. Again, making sure everything is weighed out. We also had salt on hand. So in this recipe, we ended up using the eye of round, which we cut out dehydrated. So that took a full day again right there. Then we started combining it with the tallow, and then we added salt. Now you have a couple of options here depending on what it is that you want to put into your pemmican. You can add honey. That is also an option for you if you wanted to. I haven't tried it with honey, so I can't give you specific amounts. You're gonna have to kind of play around with that. Or you can add in berries. So berries was kind of the traditional way of making pemmican. You'd have your beef, your tallow, and then you would add berries. Now, the thing with the berries is you have to also make sure that they're completely dry. So you have to dehydrate them. Berries hold a lot of moisture. Again, I haven't tried adding berries or anything into this recipe, so I can't tell you definitely how long the dehydration process in that would take, but it would take, I'm guessing, quite a bit, just because your berries are actually quite high in moisture. So those are kind of options for you. I'm sure you could also add nuts and whatnot, but again, this is more of a carnivore based approach. So it's 3 ingredients: beef, tallow, and salt. And that is how we kind of roll. Again, if you're wanting to add extra things, then you're kind of looking outside of the quote-unquote carnivore way of making pemmican. This again is 3 ingredients. It's simple, and this is just kind of how we prefer to do it. So, side note, besides all that, whatever you want to add to it, you just kind of keep mixing this here until you get a consistency that you really want. So you want something that's going to be pliable. We don't have molds. We put this onto baking sheets, essentially. So we kind of want it to be moldable and pliable and still be a little bit moist, because when you do lay it out, your tallow will solidify extremely fast. So keep that in mind when you are making this and putting in the tallow as well too. Tallow is essentially a hard oil, meaning that it will always return to its natural state, which is essentially a hard solid, right? So that's the beauty of using tallow in this, is that when you're making it, once you're done, it will create that nice solid type of bar for you. But you do have to be mindful of when you are mixing it in with your beef and your salt, that you kind of pay attention to when it starts to harden up, because if it starts to get too hard, you're going to have a really hard time putting into your baking sheet or into a mold or whatever it is that you're using. So again, just be really mindful of that fact, because tallow will solidify. And once you've kind of got the consistency that you really want, you simply just put it out onto a baking sheet. It's not pretty, I know, but this is the easiest and least cost-effective method. So again, consistency is nice and pliable, and we just kind of roll it out onto these baking sheets. It does get a little bit trickier near the edges here, just because it starts to get a little bit hard, but you kind of have to play around with it. And then once everything was kind of where we wanted it, we used parch or butcher paper. So we just cut it into strips just to make sure that we could get all of our bars in. This is a fantastic option. Butcher paper holds out great, and it's fairly inexpensive. Like, that hole will last you a lifetime. So we just kind of cut it. Not sure what it is. It's like, what, 20 centimeters wide. And then once your sheets are nice and hard, we actually ended up putting this into the fridge for maybe an hour or two, so that it got really to the point where we're able to cut it. You simply take it out. We measured ours. We wanted to get the most amount, but we also knew that we wanted to be in a bar shape, right? So we were aiming, I think, for about, you can see we're measuring it here with our trusty handy dandy 1990s ruler. It was about 5 centimeters that we were cutting it into. So from this one baking sheet, we ended up getting 14 bars, and we had 2 baking sheets. So we ended up with 28 bars once everything was said and done. So 28 bars You're looking at a cost of, was it $60, $65 for the eye of round, plus your tallow was probably around $6 or $7. So let's say we're already at $66, and then your salt, so maybe, you know, $66, $67 for 48 bars. That ends up being pretty good bang for your buck. So if you're taking into account $68, you're looking at maybe $2.50 a bar, which in my opinion is a bargain and a steal. Yeah, it's a little bit of work, but it's so worth it, because these are a fantastic snack option, or even a meal replacement, which it can be because it is so high in fat and protein. And it's, like I said, it's great because it's got a long shelf life, especially if you wrap it in the butcher paper and keep it in the fridge for months. I mean, I'm pretty sure this could last you. But again, if with the amount that we eat, we definitely go through this fairly rapidly. So once we've cut everything up, we simply just place it into our butcher paper pieces, and just simply wrap it up and tape it up, and, you know, go through all that. And by the end, you're ending up with 48 bars, like I said, that will cost you relatively $2.50 and maybe 2 days of work, which I know it's time consuming. This is a love affair with your meat and your project. So if you really want to make these, I highly suggest you get yourself a dehydrator and just start, because for what they're charging for these things, I mean, I get it, everyone's got to run a business and make money. I just simply can't afford this. Plus, this gives me an opportunity to really just, you know, make something for ourselves, and we can take these literally anywhere. We can take these on our travels, on our hikes. I take these to work. These serve as a fantastic snack option for you, because they're actually quite filling and satiating, so you're not constantly, you know, craving. But again, if you're doing carnivore, you shouldn't be craving things. But again, if you are, I found a lot of people will even, and I have tried this as well, taking this bar and just dipping a little bit of honey into it, which is also a fantastic option if you're really wanting to have something sweet, right? I mean, when you are going through a transition period with carnivore, you kind of tend to want to, you know, have something. So this is a fantastic option. You can see here, once everything was said and done, we ended up with 48 bars at $2.50 a bar. You can't, it's just impossible to ever purchase that, right? And then again, this is just kind of what it ended up being and looking like. I'll show you here, open this lovely puppy up, and these are our pemmican bars. And again, 3 ingredients: beef, tallow, salt. Fantastic snack option, or a meal replacement, or even on traveling. Like, look at this thing, like literally 3 ingredients. You can't go wrong. Anyways, good luck. This video brought to you by Resting Beef Face, natural tallow-based skincare.